Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 1 p.m. and we're going to call this afternoon's meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee to order. I would ask for a motion to adopt this afternoon's agenda. Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Warren. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Is there any declarations of pecuniary interest with this afternoon's agenda? Seeing none, we will move right into public meeting reports. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a recommendation on these applications. All recommendations that come out of this afternoon will be forwarded to the next regular council meeting on October the 22nd. The purpose of this public hearing is to allow the committee to gather information on the applications before us, to hear those wishing to make submissions on applications, and to allow the committee to ask questions of the applicants, interested parties, and staff. Everyone speaking today is requested to state their name for the public record, and in the interest of time, the committee respectfully asks that you keep your comment to no more than 5 minutes. When the appropriate time comes after the planner makes their presentation, members of the public will be provided an opportunity to speak to any public meeting items on the agenda. At that point, please either unmute yourself and turn on your video, or come to the podium and press the speak button to activate the microphone. And we will begin today with item 3.1, Plan 2024-054, an application to amend the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw 2000-75 at 68 McLaughlin Road, Lindsay. Michael Haniff, go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Haniff, and I am an urban planner at Dillon Consulting Limited here on behalf of the City of Kawartha Lakes as part of an outsourced planning services contract. Thank you to the applicant for being here today, as well as city staff and the Planning Advisory Committee for considering the zoning bylaw amendment application that is being presented and received for informational purposes today. I'd like to note that the notice for this application was originally given to landowners, agencies, and departments in accordance with matters of the Planning Act. This is the first circulation and appearance at PAC for this application. The zoning bylaw amendment being proposed is to facilitate an axe throwing facility within an existing building at 68 McLaughlin Road in Lindsay. The subject land is known legally as Concession 4, Part half of West Lot 20, Registered Plan 57, R5038, Part 5, in the former town of Lindsay in the city of Kawartha Lakes. The subject lands encompass a total area of approximately 3,436 square meters, or 0.34 hectares, and contains an existing split-level multi-tenanted building on municipal services. The existing building currently features various commercial and employment uses. Tenants include a local MP office, acupuncture works, a naturopath office, Cambrai Veterinarian Services, the Lindsay Lounge, and an ambulance and emergency service station. Surrounding uses include commercial and employment uses to the north, east, south, and west. In terms of the official plan, the subject land is designated Urban Settlement Area in Schedule A3 of the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan. And the subject land is designated Service Employment in Schedule F1 of the Lindsay Secondary Plan. In terms of zoning, the lands are zoned Prestige Employment Special Exception 2, PE-S2 zone in Schedule A of the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw 2000-75. Permitted uses in this zone include a range of commercial, industrial, institutional, and community facility uses. However, the proposed development for an axe throwing facility does not fit within the existing permitted uses. Therefore, a zoning bylaw amendment is required. The existing building has a total gross floor area of approximately 1,226 square meters, and the existing building footprint and size is not proposed to be changed as a result of the proposed development, and all development is proposed to be contained within the existing structure. The proposed axe throwing facility would be in units 7 and 8 of the existing building with a total gross floor area of approximately 202 square meters. As noted, the application is needed to rezone the property to change the existing zoning in order to facilitate the proposed use. As part of the application review, staff are currently working with the applicant and reviewing the zoning and parking requirements for the new use on the subject land to inform the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. And the application will be brought before Planning Advisory Committee at a subsequent meeting with the staff recommendation once those matters are confirmed and addressed. At this time, this fulfills the statutory public meeting requirement as set out in the Planning Act, and planning staff respectfully recommend that zoning bylaw amendment application D02024-017 through report plan 2024-054 be received for informational purposes. Planning staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions the committee or public members have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Committee, any questions? Councillor Warren?
For you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was just wondering what was in this area previously. What kind of business, and did they require so many parking spots?
That is a great question. I will defer that one to the landowner who's here today to give a brief contextual history of the site.
So maybe we'll deal with that question when they come up. Councillor Warren, is there any further questions? Member Barkwell?
Yeah, I was just curious about the parking. Right now, there are 44 parking spaces that are marked, and there is additional property that could have parking on because it is graded. And so I don't know how many parking spaces you expected them to have and why that's an issue. I just didn't understand from the report.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So as per section 5.12D of the Lindsay zoning bylaw, where use is changed within an existing building or structure, and where the new use requires more parking or loading spaces than the former use, the number of additional parking spaces or loading spaces required shall be the difference between the parking spaces or loading spaces required by the new use and parking spaces or loading spaces required by the former use. So under the direction of the zoning bylaw, there is a need to review the new use in the context of the parking spaces that currently exist to determine if the new use does require additional parking spaces. And so we are working with the applicant right now to address that and include that within the zoning bylaw amendment being proposed to capture those uses and to capture the additional parking spaces that will be required.
I don't think that was very clear. I've got section 5.12.
Let me take a stab at it and see whether my interpretation. I think what he's trying to say in layman's terms is whatever business was there before, their parking requirement was less than an axe throwing establishment that's going to bring more people, so then they're requiring more spaces. Is my terms correct, or that's the gist of it?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that would be correct. This would be a place of entertainment use, and therefore the parking space requirements would be different.
So does that answer, or?
I'll wait till the owner does his presentation, because the question I asked was how many parking spaces do you think they need for the proposed use? I don't know what was there before. Councillor Warren asked, what was there before? How many parking spaces was required by the previous use, and why are you asking to have more or less, or you don't know how many parking spaces are required now? It's very confusing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, under the zoning bylaw, places of entertainment require essentially 1 parking space per 9 square meters. So given the use is for a place of entertainment within an existing building, and the square footage of that new use, I would need to comply with the requirement for places of entertainment parking spaces.
So thank you very much. So one parking space per 9 square meters. This property or this use has got 202 square meters. So that would be about 18 or so parking spaces. I would think that would be adequately available to them. I don't understand why you think it wouldn't be. If you're, like, I'm reading that as, under the section about the entertainment lounge or a lounge in area, other premises licensed according to the Liquor License Act. So I think that's the use that you're talking about. And that's, it says 1 per 11 square meters here, but you're saying 1 with 9. But still, you're looking at 18 or 20 parking spaces. And I think 22, is that what it works out to? Okay, 22. I did it for what this was, 11 square meters. So 22 parking spaces. And, I think they're even at that gravel area would accommodate 22.
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair. Yep, that's the exercise that we are currently undertaking with the applicant. It would be an additional 22 spaces, while currently there's 43 parking spaces. We would just need those to be marked on the site plan so that we can proceed. As such, if they have additional capacity to add those spaces, that's perfect. If not, they would be captured as part of the amendment to facilitate the proposed use with a reduction in parking spaces provided versus the requirements for that place of entertainment use.
All good. Member Barkwell, for now.
Sorry. Yeah,
no,
I'll
that's
just
all right.
wait to hear the owner.
Councillor Richardson, is there something? All right. Any other questions for Mr. Hanafi? Everybody's good? Okay. Does the applicant, owner, or their agent wish to speak to the application?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and through you to the council. Thank you for your attendance and your attention here today. So my name is Matthew Colavecchia. I represent Doug Dent, who owns this particular property. He's authorized me to give you whatever information you need, answer any questions that you might have. When it comes to the parking, Glenn here will take care of the official answer. Very briefly, that gravel area is owned by Doug Dent, but it's not officially a part of this structure. But when it comes to the parking itself, and as I say, Glenn's going to get into it a little bit more rigorously, we're an after-hours operation. So the previous use in this location was, most recently, it was a warehouse. Before that, it was the U-Brew Center, beer and wine factory. And before that, it was a golf simulator, and I honestly can't remember what it was before that. I am a tenant of the building already as Acupuncture Works, and I've been there for almost 20 years. So, this is a new project that I'm really excited to bring to the Kawartha Lakes. We did have an axe throwing club here in town over on Mary Street. It was opened under very similar zoning restrictions, but that's another part of the project, or another point altogether. But I'm excited to get this going. COVID, unfortunately, killed the other club. It's time to rebuild something like that here in our city. It's a lot of fun. It's very safe. It sounds frightening. It's not. It's axe throwing and not axe catching, which I often have to explain to people. We're going to provide some local jobs and some fun to do indoors here in the Kawartha Lakes, and we were remarkably short on fun things to do inside the Kawartha Lakes. And so I'm here to answer any questions that you might have, Mr. Chair, through you to the council.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any questions? Councillor Warren, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, how many people do you anticipate coming to your axe throwing party per evening? And it would be mostly in the evening and not during the day, I wouldn't think.
That's right, Mr. Chair, through you to the councillor. Yeah, so it is going to be an after-hours operation, so the doors aren't going to open until 6 o'clock on weekdays. On weekends, however, there's very little going on in the entire building. And so, we're going to have access to the full parking lot. As a tenant there for 20 years, I have watched the parking situation, and there has never, ever been a moment when that parking lot was even close to being full. And that's during its daily operations as all of the people that are in there now. So I'm expecting, like on a league night, we might get 10 to 20 people coming in on a league night. On weekends, I'm hopefully the capacity that we're looking for is going to be 40 guests and 10 staff. So we're going to use a good portion of the parking, but as was mentioned before, people are going to be coming up, not just by themselves, but groups of people arrive in cars. So that's. Did I answer your question, Councillor? Thank you,
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
and just a follow-up. So most of those businesses that are there already would not be operating in the evening.
Correct, Mr. Chair. Through you to the councillor, absolutely. In my clinic, for instance, the only person that is operating after 6 p.m. is sometimes a massage finishes up at 7 o'clock, but then the chiropractor, he's there from 6 to 10 o'clock, and on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights. He's pretty much the only thing that is operating in the entire building during those hours. So I am personally very confident that the parking situation is a non-issue altogether. So you're welcome.
Any further questions from committee? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to the application?
The button, eh? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Glenn Wilcox from Wilcox Architects. I'm the consultant, and I'm going to help explain some of the other issues there. I think Matthew's done a good job explaining what his business is about, so I won't touch on that. Essentially, we're combining two existing commercial units in this plaza into one suite. It'll be self-contained, no expansion to the mall, as was previously indicated. The building has block walls and precast floors, so it's a very initial review. But I wish to speak on the item which is parking, which came to us a bit late in the process, actually September 24th. So they asked us to provide a summary of uses and space requirements to say how much parking do we really need. When we went through that process and looking at the area of each suite, the use, and checked the zoning bylaw, we came up with 53 spaces as a need. The actual spaces that are striped out on site are 43. So that would result in a deficiency of 10 spaces. So I thought we could talk about that a bit. First of all, Matthew indicated that their business is going to be off hours. So that's the first point to talk about. So there'll be little or no overlap to the existing tenants and their business functions. I can also attest that over the 40 years I've been here in town, and I think that building's been here most of that time, I've rarely seen 20 to 30% of the parking utilized at any time being to the building. We have used the 9 meters squared for the Axe Club as a place of assembly. That generates 21 spaces, Mike, when you go through it. There's going to be 28 lanes according to the diagrams, and I just wanted to indicate that 2 people don't throw in the same lane. They throw in their own individual lane. So if you come there as 2 people, you have 2 lanes side by side. If you're 4 people, you each throw into your own lane there. So you could probably look at it this way. If 2 people come in a car or 4 people come in a car together, that would remove the deficiency that we're talking about into here. Other uses in this bylaw, as Mr. Barkwell indicated, have different ratios. And I'm not sure why, a restaurant or other functions have 11 meters square, but that's what it dictates. But if you look at other type of assembly uses, you could say, why are there more people required per square meter for this particular use? So in summary, I'd like to submit that the parking really isn't an issue due to those reasons. It's unfortunate that those questions came out very late in the process. We did respond to them, but the response was you're going to have to wait to have these dealt with, so it's going to be even more of a delay. And this originally came up through a building permit submission. We did apply to the building permit, it was referred to planning. And when this question of use came up, I said we did the same facility in industrial use over on Mary Street without any issue whatsoever. And the response was that was a mistake. Anyways, so the only reason that we're going through this is because our zoning bylaw is so archaic. And by archaic, I mean when you look at it, it says specific uses. Most other municipalities approach it this way. They say uses like. So if you don't have a video store rental, which doesn't even exist as a use anymore, that's one of the uses that are approved. You can't move into the mall. And that's true for every zone category. So there's a huge amount of effort from our planning department and from applicants like myself and the owner to deal with these very specific use issues. If the zoning bylaw was up to date, these issues would not come before your committee, and it would make it a lot simpler. So I don't know where that process is, because I know I've been told, well, we want to update the zoning bylaws. We want to make them more current and to function better for us. And I guess that's an ongoing issue, and we're sort of caught in the middle of that, unfortunately. So I would say that if that bylaw was revised and current, we probably wouldn't even be here today to talk to this issue. Thank you for your time, and I'm certainly prepared to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any questions? Everybody's good? Okay. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application?
Good afternoon, committee. It's Tom DeBoer, TD Consulting. Not formally retained by the applicant. It was just a visual that I had witnessed when I reviewed the report, and I'm curious to know why it's being referred back to staff on such a simple matter. Realizing that the use is close to, but obviously it needed the zoning amendment. Having gone through many of these myself, and knowing that if a building permit had not been a requirement to open the establishment, we wouldn't be having this meeting because the use would have just participated as similar before. So in order of keeping businesses going and flowing, I would ask that the committee seriously consider approving this as opposed to deferring it back to staff again, as we all know that this staff deferral will again cause another 2 to 3 months delay from this business opening in the Kawarthas. So if I would just put that on the floor and for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeBoer. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the application? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Calling a third and final time, anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Committee, what are your recommendations for council? Councillor Richardson?
I would like to actually, can I ask Director Barry if she wanted to weigh in on the comment regarding the parking?
You can do anything you like.
Well, then I just did it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity and the discussion that we're hearing today. What I'm hearing a lot of, actually, Mr. Chair, is quite good justification and rationale for an exemption from an existing archaic, I can agree, parking standard. The fact is, and I don't believe, but I will be, I can be stood corrected, Mr. Chair? Stand to be corrected. If a draft amendment was presented to staff, which I fear was not, and so the onus is on staff, Councillor, to draft an amendment. Without having the specifics, notwithstanding support for an exemption from the parking, Council and this committee still needs to see a draft of a bylaw to put forward. We are prepared to draft that for this committee, which would be returned to the committee. The asks have been made from the applicant, the owner, the team that we've heard from today, and it sounds like quite a bit of work has been done from the discussion. And the committee sees the timelines of receipt of application package and where the milestones are in the application life cycle. So I think we are comfortable and confident in saying that things are progressing at a good pace and at an acceptable pace and in accordance with our requirements under the Act. So we have every expectation that we would be back. In fact, we don't have 3 months before the end of the year. So unless anyone's planning on seeing each other here over the holidays, which I don't believe we are, we have every intention from our staffing level to come back to this committee with a draft amendment, which is precisely why you have an information report in front of you today and not a recommendation in the absence of a bylaw. Hope that helps.
Just for clarification, based on that conversation, then would it be possible, if the committee so chose, that it could go, that bylaw could go directly to council on October 22nd rather than coming back to committee?
Mr. Chair, if that's a question directed to me, I would offer in response that we absolutely would support moving a bylaw forward to council, but I would ask for the committee's discretion to stay with the planning division to bring that forward when it's ready, with a commitment to do it this year. That may not be at the October council meeting. As you may be aware, the reporting schedule and deadline is current to today, so reports are due. So just in the interest of administrative time, the earliest, Mr. Chair, we would bring that forward is November council. Thanks.
Councillor Richardson?
Based on that comments, I would like to move forward with that direction.
Okay, so you're making a motion then
To receive as information and to have the planning department bring that bylaw back as soon as possible to council.
Okay, so let's just get our wording right first. Okay, so motion to receive, and then the direction is that planning staff bring the bylaw directly to council at the regular council meeting in November, and bypassing PAC. Okay, we're all clear. Seconder, Councillor Warren, discussion. Are we good, Joel? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. All right. That brings us to item 3.2, Plan 2024-055, applications to amend the Kawartha Lakes Official Plan and Township of Fenland Zoning Bylaw 12-95 at 4544 Highway 35, Cameron. Mr. Romerol? I think you're on mute. We can see you, but we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon. For those who have yet to meet, my name is Rafael Romero, and I'm an urban planner from Dillon Consulting Limited, here on behalf of the City of Kawartha Lake, sorry, I meant to share my screen. See my screen? So, okay, there you go. So I'm, as mentioned, I'm an urban planner from Dillon Consulting Limited, here on behalf of the City of Kawartha Lakes Development Services Division. Thank you to the applicant for taking the time to be here virtually, and to staff, the chair, and the rest of the Planning Advisory Committee for considering this official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application to permit the self-storage facility being presented and received for informational purposes. I would like to note that the notice for this application was initially given to landowners, relevant agencies, and departments in accordance with matters of the Planning Act. This is the first circulation and appearance at PAC for this application. The subject land, as shown on the screen, is located at 4544 Highway 35 and is legally known as 57 R 6073 Part 1 and 57 R 7996 Part 1, part of Lot 14 Concession 7 in the former Township of Fenland in the City of Kawartha Lakes. These subject lands encompass a total area of 2.17 hectares with approximately 133 meters of frontage on Ranchers Road. Existing uses include the commercial retail sales of hot tubs, which will be retained with this proposal. Surrounding uses include the following. Commercial outdoor storage to the north, east and south are vacant commercial land, and west are vacant agricultural lands. The subject lands are currently designated highway commercial on Schedule A5 of the Kawartha Lakes official plan and zoned highway commercial exception 2 on Schedule A to the Township of Dunlin zoning bylaw 1295. The applicant is proposing to rezone and redesignate the subject lands to facilitate the development of a self-storage facility while retaining the existing commercial use presently on site. The application requires a site-specific official plan and zoning bylaw amendment to permit the proposed self-storage use. Furthermore, it has been clarified that the applicant also wishes to rezone and redesignate the lands for environmental protection as it relates to existing wetlands on the subject. At this time, this fulfills the statutory public meeting requirement as set out in the Planning Act. Planning staff respectfully recommend that the official plan D01-2024-006 and the zoning bylaw amendment D06-2024-18 through plan 2024-055 be received for informational purposes only and referred back to staff until refinements to the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment and are refined and addressed as accordingly. Planning staff and the applicant are here to assist in any questions anyone may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Committee, any questions? Okay, seeing none. Does the applicant, owner, or their agent wish to speak to the application?
Not at this time.
Not at this time? Okay, thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to the application? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Calling a third and final time. Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, committee, what is your recommendation to council? Councillor Warren?
I'll move the recommendation as printed that it be received for information.
Seconder for the motion, Member Barkwell. Any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So at this point, this meeting being held under the Planning Act this public meeting now being held under the Planning Act is now adjourned. We will move into item 4, deputations, which we have none. Correspondence, I believe we have none. Item 6, regular and returned reports. Item 6.1, Plan 2024-056, Provincial Planning Statement 2024 Information Report. Mr. Jull? Ms. Berry?
Apologies, Mr. Chair, handled that well. Yes, so we wanted to share with the committee today a report that staff have prepared for the benefit of council and the committee, just explaining at a high level what the sort of key changes are to the new provincial planning statement 2024, which the minister has deemed to come into effect very shortly, actually October 20th, 2024 is when we're going to see the new PPS. I think we'll continue calling it as its acronym, what we're used to. Difference being that up until now, it's been the Provincial policy statement, and now, of course, will be the provincial planning statement. So the big difference here is we are seeing the complete removal of the growth plan, which has been a policy guidance document from the province affecting land use decisions and development in the city of Kawartha Lakes since 2006, as well as a series of provincial policy statements up until now. So the PPS 2020, the growth plan, well, 2019 consolidated in 2020, both will leave us as of October 20th to be replaced by the new PPS 2024. So the report essentially just covers some of the, as I say, key areas of change. There's an appendix, which is a table, and just gives you some idea of how these changes impact the city. So we've highlighted the pieces around growth targets and MZOs, settlement area expansions and how those are reviewed and handled going forward, intensification, affordable housing, employment areas are captured in the staff report, and finally, agriculture. Mr. Chair, I am happy to take any questions the committee has, and maybe just cap my comments off by saying, going forward in our staff reports and the decisions that this committee makes and ultimately recommend to council, and council's ultimate decisions will all now be in alignment with the PPS 2024. So we will see some different language in our planning reports, keep everybody on their toes, and the comparisons and the policy evaluations are now going to be with the PPS 2024 and our official plan as always. Mr. Chair, thanks.
Thank you for that. Committee, any questions for Director Barry, Member Barkwell?
Thank you very much. It's an excellent report, taking a lot of information from the PPS and bringing it down to understandable language. I just have a few questions on Appendix B. The population projections from the Ministry of Finance. So that's different than the Ministry of Housing, and I wondered, have you got those already, or are those going to be similar? Like right now, the projection to 2051 is for the growth of 130,000, to 130,000 rather. So I just wonder if those numbers are still the same. And then coincident with that is the MZO developments are in addition to these planning targets. So if that was 130,000 growth by 2051, now including MZOs within the settlement area, is that in addition to the 130, or we like our GMS task force is using the numbers for MZOs within that 130 growth. So is that going to change things?
Mr. Chair, yeah. So through you, thanks for the question, Member Barkwell. I'm hearing a couple of pieces in there. So the main distinction is that the Ministry of Finance produces projections yearly. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, historically for the purposes of growth planning, had developed forecasts. So forecasts being different than annual projections that look at birth and death rates, the basics in migration, things like this. The forecasts that were included in Schedule 3 of the growth plan only were reviewed at the time of amendments to the growth plan. So those were not issued annually. So all municipalities that were subject to the policies of the growth plan were evaluating and making decisions on growth management based on those forecasts. In fact, and thank you for being so diligent in looking at the GMS material, when the province had established the forecast for CKL to 2051, the minimum for our population forecast was actually 117,000, but you're quite right, the 130, that is what we are thinking is recognizing it's ambitious, but the number that we had to actually develop as our targets instead of the 117 because of the MZOs. So we actually were, in this case, I'd like to say ahead of the ball, ahead of the curve, and already saw sort of the writing on the wall and what was happening with the proposed changes in provincial policy and how MZOs would have to be considered and addressed in future planning. And the idea, even when the PPS was proposed, was that MZOs be included over and above what the forecasts were. So we have included that, and that's why we see this higher number, because we take a look at what our density capabilities are, what our intensification targets are, what we're going to strive to build towards, and get to that 130,000, taking into the account the MZOs. So not over and above.
So they kind of line up then. You don't see a great difference between what the forecasts from the Ministry of Finance has been with the projections that are for the growth management strategy. So that, I was just wondering if they are less than, because they are more statistically based, are they less than what our projections were? Are they going to be about the same?
Yeah, great question. There is a discrepancy for sure, and it's for the reasons that you just named. So they are very statistical in nature, and what our responsibility is going to be going forward is reviewing the population and employment figures. Best practices would tell us that should be at least every 4 years or so, if not even annually, and sort of course correct where needed. So forecasts, unlike projections, forecasts do take into account all sorts of other land use considerations. And we will be coming forward through our GMS final report, and as we go through next year's beginning stages of an official plan review and update, encouraging council in its decision-making to continue this practice of forecasting, looking at all considerations, not just the basic minimum statistics of a projection.
Thank you.
Member O'Reilly? You're good. Councillor Warren?
Through you, in the report, it talks about the list of 6 criteria that must be considered. It kind of touches on a few, but it doesn't give the whole list. And I only ask that because if you go right into the plan, it talks on natural heritage, all sorts of environmental things, but I don't know if that has to be considered. So I was just wondering if you had that list. So it's on, where is it? It's in the main part of the, okay, so it's under settlement area expansions. The PPS provides a list of 6 criteria that must be considered when evaluating a proposal for a new settlement area or an expansion. The criteria range from infrastructure capacity, impacts on agriculture, to the need for the land and phasing of development. So I was just wondering if there were, that doesn't really add up to 6. So I was wondering if there were any others of import. These were questions I was going to ask yesterday, but.
Mr. Chair, through you to the member. So the content in the report actually summarizes the 6 criteria. We do have a copy available of the new PPS for all committee members. If they're interested, it's also available online. And so we can see clearly articulated the 6 criteria, but in our estimation, and just to sort of translate this into a more legible form, we sort of summarized where there's some overlap in the criteria, in our opinion.
Mayor Elmsley?
Does this policy statement affect anything that is currently in the pipeline? Or is every application that has been received will be treated under the old guidelines, and it's only from October 20th on applications received will be considered under the new ones?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the decision, the date of decision, is when it matters that the PPS 2024 is being applied. It doesn't matter if an application was filed 2 years ago or last year or even on October 19th. When the decision comes to council for the final say, it will be in accordance with the PPS 2024, right? So we're going to continue working through with applicants if there are needs to adjust here or there and make sure that we've got that alignment. From the current state of affairs, the applications that we have on the go, everything from, the minor variances straight through to the larger site plans, subdivision files, and even including our most recent secondary plans that were very recently in front of the tribunal and, Mr. Chair, were approved. Let's just take a moment, please, if we can, and recognize that we have no outstanding appeals to our official plans in CKL, first time in 12 years. So congratulations to all involved. And so there was nothing outstanding that the new PPS would be sort of, or application proposals that would contradict the PPS. We've had an eye on what's going on with the PPS 2024 since its draft release a year ago, April. It has changed substantially from what originally was rolled out in April 2023. The Esther Bunnery wasn't very good to us or other municipalities at that time. It was quite surprising to see some of the more dramatic changes that were proposed, and if those or the majority of those had carried on through to this version, we'd be having a very different conversation today in terms of its impacts to the city. But a number of those changes, I'd like to think in small part in response to even the comments that we filed to the ERO, as many other municipalities and agencies and stakeholders did, that the province listened and created a document that we can work with, I think, quite well.
Member Barkwell.
Under section 3.6, the sewage, water, and stormwater, the third section, I sent it to you this morning, but I guess it was too late to try and give you a heads up. It says, where municipal sewage services and municipal water services are not available, planned, or feasible, private communal sewage services and private communal water services are the preferred form of servicing for multi-unit or lot development to support the protection of the environment and minimize potential risk to human health and safety. So this, to me, says that that communal water systems, sewage and water treatment, are going to be permissible on rural properties.
You're looking for confirmation.
Sorry, I sent it to you this morning. I should have time so that you'd think about it. You can give me an answer later, but but yeah, it seems to me that they're saying that it because that's right after they talk about rural areas in municipalities. In rural areas, rural settlement areas shall be the focus of growth and development, and their vitality and regeneration shall be promoted. So they seem to be saying that, promotion of rural areas, and I don't know if they're allowing private water and sewage systems. They're saying it's fine. That's what it seems to say to me.
I'm going to take a crack at this just from maybe general comments, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure that maybe there's several questions, and I will, in due course, take a look at your email. Thank you for flagging that. So the servicing policies aren't that new, meaning we've been working under a provincial framework. The municipality already has been. That does allow private services, communal services, and full municipal. And in fact, there's levels of expectation on where each of those types of systems should be and is. And that then dictates the type of development and the nature and the style of development. I do want to clarify between settlement areas that are rural and areas that are rural, because they are different and they have different servicing implications. So rural settlement areas would be like our hamlets, for example. And of all the hamlets, there are a variety of existing services. Some have municipal water, others are entirely private, etc. So rural areas, the idea isn't to promote sprawling growth across the countryside. Hands down, that hasn't changed. Looking at options or being permissive or promoting options for communal services where they're appropriate, if they're appropriate, and if the municipality is in a position to support those, if and when needed, that carries over. That's not a new policy. So that's something that we can continue looking at in terms of service opportunities through the next official plan update.
Any further questions? Member O'Reilly?
Thank you, through to Leanne. On that, there were small clusters allowed at one time, maybe still are. For example, Snug Harbor, I think, is an application in front of us coming to you or at your, there, where they were allowed up to, was it 4 or 5 for a communal system? And that's still an option, and we know that through golf courses and other things that there potentially could be larger communal systems if the municipality supported it.
There could be, yep. And through you again, Mr. Chair, to the member, the number of connections per system is also based on licensing requirements from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, Parks, etc. So actually, I won't put our colleague from Engineering Corporate Assets on the spot by any means, although this is probably an area that he's far more well-versed in. The point is that there are, and in some cases, the designation isn't actually rural. Yes, it's sort of outside of urban areas, but they're in waterfront designations. So therein again, we have a different hierarchy of what type of servicing would be available for a particular density. Clusters are, in their original sense, a thing of the past. That isn't something we would necessarily, be able to support in the middle of a rural area, but in a rural settlement or in a waterfront area, those are still proposals we're seeing today. Yep.
Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. One thing that we struggle with is that intensification. And it sounds like it's a moving target now with this new PPS that we have to look at into like redevelopment areas or into new areas. I'm just wondering, that's always been a struggle for us here. How do you feel about that? Kind of, it's wishy-washy. My opinion looking at it.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mr. Chair. Through you, it's in some ways giving a lot more ownership, accountability, responsibility to the municipality to decide what they want to do. And to make decisions that aren't necessarily bound under the same parameters or guardrails aren't a bad thing, but parameters that we were bound by when directed through the growth plan. All right, so the pieces around intensification and density targets, not a bad thing, but having the flexibility and the latitude to determine how and at what pace and where we see those appropriate for our urban areas, etc. It's a shift in sort of the framework or the perspective where we have now greater ability to dictate and determine, we, the municipality and council, where and how that should look, as opposed to, I agree, here. Thanks, Councillor Warren. And I think we're going to really grow into that. That's, I think, an opportunity for the city to really take some ownership over how growth looks and how development looks, as opposed to what some might have said was perhaps more arbitrary when determined by others in other areas.
Any further questions of Director Barry? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Would anybody like to make a motion for adjournment? Mayor Elmsley? Oh, sorry. A motion to receive the report. Member O'Reilly, seconded by Councillor Warren. All in favor? Carried. Motion for adjournment. Mayor Elmsley, seconded. Member Barkwell, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.